Hi everybody, this is Katie Vandermeer and I'm making this video for CIS 234 and 235. I'm going to show you how to search for VM Workstation and Windows Server Release 2 2012 in the On the Hub DreamSpark Microsoft Imagine Academy now is what it's called. But I want to make sure that you're getting the right stuff that we need for this course. So if you're starting in 234, we're going to create in VM Workstation, and I'll show you that in this video too, servers A, B, and C. If you're in CIS 235, I do recommend that you start fresh. So do the same thing that first time students do in CIS 234. So in server 1, what that class does, 234, is we start with our server install and then we build our servers as we go on and do different things. In CIS 235, it starts up with chapter 1, assuming you already have your servers installed. So we are going to go back and install servers A, B, and C and do some basic configurations that we'll do in both of these classes. So this material needs to be done no matter what, depending on what class you're in. And again, if you're in server 2, you can try to use your old servers, but if you had configuration problems last semester, if you wanted just a clean slate, I do recommend you start over. So let's start by going over to On the Hub. Now there is links in Blackboard and, excuse me, sneeze. There are links in Blackboard on where you can get connected, and you also have email. If you still cannot get into On the Hub, and you're having a problem, if you've checked the forgot password link and you still can't get in, if you don't have your email and you have no information on that, then you can contact me and we'll ask our secretary to see if something's wrong in the system. But everybody at this point in the semester should have their email and you should be able to log into On the Hub. So you want to go to that link and log in. So you'll have an email in your student email, but also in the resource link, here's a quick shortcut, and it'll take you right over to this login page for On the Hub. You log in using the credentials that you're given, and then we need to look for our software that we need. Now Microsoft, it doesn't show products for that automatically, so we have to search for our product. So let's get the right product for that. So we're going to search server 2012 release 2 or R2. Search, and a whole list of things come up, and we want to scroll down to not very far from the top, Windows Server 2012 R2. Click the drop down arrow here, and the version that we want is the data center version 64-bit. Okay, there are 4 or 5 different types of servers you can get depending on the complexity. There's standard, enterprise, web development, depending on what it is that you want to do with your server, but our standard server is the data center version. That's the most common. So we're going to learn on that. And what you do, so here's that one. I'm going to add it to my cart. Now I have already done it, so I have this error, which isn't really an error, it's just saying you've already bought it. That doesn't mean you can't use the one you have. So if you're a Windows Server 2 student, or if you've purchased it before, you just want to go to your previous orders. You can download it again. You can get your product key, and I'll show you that here in a second. So if you're a new student and you've never done this, it'll say add it to the cart. So we're adding it to the cart. And then the other software that we want to go find is VM Workstation. And the newest workstation we're going to use is Workstation 12. Now, if you're using Workstation 11 from last semester, that's fine. You don't have to upgrade if you don't want to. There's some differences in the way they look, but they still do the same thing, and it works well with what we're doing in this class. I've updated to Workstation 12 Pro, and it's a nice version of the software. So this runs on Windows and Linux systems. And again, if you're using a Mac, then you'll want to get some virtualization software for Macs. And hopefully you know what that is, because I don't use Mac. So figure that one out, but I think you can do that. Okay, so we're going to select Windows in the drop down, and then again add it to cart, and it'll add it to your shopping cart. I've already purchased it. Okay, but yours will add into your shopping cart, and then you could go through the process of checking out. So like I have 0 stuff in my my shopping cart, but you can go to your shopping cart and check out. So this is free software, so you don't have to pay for anything, but they do keep track of your order history. Now this is useful because here I went to my account and then your orders. Those of you who've already downloaded it, you'll want to do this. And those of you who haven't, you'll probably need to do this in the past. Say if you get a new computer or something like that and you want to download the software again. Here, when you order something and you finish the process, you'll get a link for the download. So here is where I would click here to download VM Workstation 12. And then you look in your history, and here's my download for Data Center Windows Server. When you click on either one of those links here, yours looks different. I have other stuff I've downloaded. But when you click on those links, it'll tell you your license key. And you'll need those license keys when you first install the software. So make sure you make note of those. I pasted mine over in a sticky note or in a notepad document. But make sure you grab your product keys, or you can always go back into DreamSpark and grab those. So once you click those downloads, it goes through this process here, the Secure Download Manager. It creates SDX files. There's a video here that you can watch if you've never downloaded from DreamSpark before. But you need to download the SDM, and then you download your SDX files. Those are this. This is like an SDX file, and this is an SDX file. And this process here is really self-explanatory once you start doing it. If you have any problems, watch those videos, or you could post something in Blackboard in the discussion board if you want, but it's a pretty easy process for students at our level, I think. When you do that, it downloads the SDX file. Now, make sure 100% that your download is completely downloaded before you go to do the installations. So that's what we're going to do next in this second part of this video. Not the full installations. We're going to set up VMware. But once you do the installations, your files are, or once not the installations, excuse me, once you do your downloads, you're going to have the ISO images. ISO is the extension. And if this is, here's mine, for example, look in the properties, you'll notice it has the .iso. If this is not fully downloaded, then it's not going to install. And you'll want to go back into DreamSpark in the Secure Download Manager and start the download again. Most of the problems we've had at the beginning of the semester is that students didn't do the full download. And these are big pieces of software, especially Windows Server, so it takes some time. So you need your full download before you can go on to this next step. So if you want to pause this video, come back to it, go ahead, but finish out this part of DreamSpark to get your software together. What you need is the ISO image for Windows Server Release 2 Data Center 64-bit version, and then you also need VM Workstation 12. Okay, so here's my exe or my exe, but that was a installation file too. For that's what was downloaded from Secure Download Manager, was my VM Workstation. Once VM Workstation is downloaded, do the installation. So that comes down as a file like this. Double click on that. Go through the installation process. Just take all of the defaults. It's really easy. And then after that, you can launch VM Workstation Pro. So I have an icon. You can search for yours if you're not sure where it is. And now we're ready. Okay? So pause your video if you need to. Finish all your downloads. Make sure you have this set up, installed. And now we're going to go into part 2, where we're going to set up some virtual machines for server A, B, and C for both of our classes. If you're in the old the server 2 class and you have like Windows Server 1 and server 2, you can just probably use server 1 for everything. But again, I do recommend starting fresh so that we're all on the same process. Now I've already got my license key. This lasts for a year. If you are logging in for the first time, again, you'll have to verify your license information, and then you can begin this. So I'm going to make note of where my ISO image is for Windows Server 12. It is on my desktop. It's 4 gigs. It's pretty large. Okay, we're ready to go now. We're going to create 3 virtual machines, server A, B, and C. And we won't start the install yet. I'll do that in a separate video. So let's create these. We're going to do a typical setup. Next. I'm going to click on I will install the OS later. I don't want to point to my ISO right now. Next. Make sure this is selected on Microsoft Windows, and then your version. Click your drop down and search for, not Vista, search for Windows Server 2012. And then hit next. What are we going to call this? We're going to call it Server A. So I could do Server A, or you could delete the whole thing and just do Server A 2012 R2, whatever you want, but identify that as Windows as the Server A. So I'm going to go with Server A 2012 R2. I'm not going to change my location of my virtual systems. It puts it into like this My Documents area. And that's if you want to change where your virtual system is stored, you can change that location. That depends on how your hardware files are set up. So here's Server A. I'm going to hit next. Here we have 2 options. If there's a chance that you're going to move this virtual system around, like maybe if you're in class and you want to copy it to your memory stick at the end of the semester physically so you can bring it with you, or if you're on a temporary computer and you're going to have a different computer in a couple weeks or something like that, you could split the virtual disk into multiple files, because that makes it easier to move around. But I'm on my computer. I'm not going to move mine all semester. I have a brand new computer. I'm good. So I'm going to click mine and store it as a single file. It performs a little bit faster when you do it as a single file, and multiple files, it just allows you to move them easier if you need to. 60 gig is the maximum disk space, and that's great. So we're going to hit next and then finish at this point. So going over here, a couple of things we want to edit. So now I notice I have Server A. I'm going to edit my virtual machine, and over here we're going to leave 2 gigs of memory. We have 1 SCSI hard drive right now. We may have to add another hard drive later on. It depends on what our labs call for in the book. This material in this new material, it gives us this lab setup guide that I'm kind of following to help figure out what we need, but it's not very complete, or it is complete, but it doesn't say, like, I can't find anywhere it says we need additional hard drives, but we might later on. So this is a document I'll share with you guys because it's helpful, where it shows, okay, we need, in order to do lab 2, for example, we need to have Windows Server installed with the time zone set up, and these are our IPs and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'm following to get us set up so we're ready to go with all of these labs. And in here, oh, like here's an example. Here's an example when we get to lab 3 in 234. It says server C must have 3 hard disks. So when we created that one, when we get to that lab, we'll probably have to go back and add a second and a third hard disk. But at this point, let's just leave it with 1 hard disk. I don't see anything that indicates otherwise at this point that would be a problem. So we'll leave that. Let's see, our network adapter, I want to talk about this real quick. I've done a lot of reading on this. If you have a network at home, host only is great, but you know, if you're not working in a virtual system and you can do the installation of these servers on computers, that's great. That's where you would do host only. But you have a router that you're using to connect the machines, but we are not in that environment. So at home, we're at our home network. Typically, we're in online class, so we're not on campus. So we're going to select the bridged option for how our network is going to be connected. If you're on campus, that has some security features in place, so you're not allowed to do that. So on campus, you would select NAT. So we're at home on our home PCs or systems, and most of us are using like a router a wireless router through our ISP of some sort, and bridged is the normal setting. If you know a little bit more about these hardware settings and you want to set it up differently based on your network, you just have to make sure all server A, B, and C are the same. So I'm recommending at this point just select bridge and then hit OK. And that will automatically select our network address so we can connect to the internet, is how that will work, the network adapter. Okay. The last thing that you would need to do, which is where you would point this installation to the ISO image, is when you go down to the CD DVD drive, this is where is our installation file. And you would go use ISO image because that's what we've downloaded. Browse to that location. So I'm going to browse to my desktop. That's where I put it. And here's my ISO. So I point to that and then OK. When I start the next video, that's where I'm going to pick up. So you don't have to do that right now. But that's how you point for the installation. Now, once your installation is done, you want to make sure you unselect that so it doesn't always try to install from the ISO. So this is first time only you would do that. So we'll hit OK. And when you're ready to do an install, do power on. I'm going to start our next video with the install, so don't do that yet. But in the meantime, that's our configurations for server A. I'm going to stop talking and go through the process to create server B, same setup, server C, the same setup, and then end the video. So you can do the same thing. So home, Create a new virtual machine. Typical. Install the OS later. Microsoft Windows, Windows Server 12. I'm going to call this the same that I did with my last one, which was Server B instead of A. 2012 R2, not Sever. There's an R in there. Next. I'm storing mine as a single file. And finish. And then I'm going to do edit. And memory is good. Auto detect, I'm going to point to my ISO. You'll be able to only do the installations one at a time, but that's cool. And my network adapter, I'm going to change to bridge. That's all I changed. Looks like those settings are the same. Okay, let's create a third one. Create a new virtual machine. Server C, 2012 R2. Store as a single file. Finish and edit. Select the bridged. And point to my ISO. There we go. So now these machines are saved. Virtual System saves them. When I go back to start my next part and I want to, and you get to a lab that says launch server A or A server or whatever, you go over to your virtual machine setups that you have and then you power on this virtual machine. Now, right now, they're pointing to the ISO image. Oops, notice that. ISO, ISO, ISO. Once we do the install, you want to change that. So it points to the physical drive right here. And after that, it will then just launch. So that's all for this video. If you have any questions before you can go on, it's important to have all three of these configured so that we can start our installations on the next one. Thanks. I'll see you in a minute if you're continuing on.